you'll be wearing, like, well, you would be.
Beat with smoke, and my day one bros that kept me close. Then I sit my technique, take a tour. They're trying to get me on the ropes. I broke it, especially in this cold.
In terms of formal training, I have not had any preparation for mental well-being at all, and I believe that we, especially in universities and colleges, there's not enough emphasis on how invested we have to be mentally to be able to perform things physically and be present in rehearsals and be able to sustain our training independently, and whether you're part of a course or not. I definitely have not been warned or prepared for that, but it's being part of Boy Blue and kind of discovering that myself through like meeting different practitioners. It's been kind of a learning through doing and experiencing, but I definitely feel like it's changing for us, for hip hop artists in general. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Yeah.
Our training hasn't helped at all, I don't think. I think because of the severity of the piece that we're doing at the moment, I think it's more of an issue that could be tackled by like a psychiatrist or someone that does therapy. I think because it's quite a heavy subject, there's still an issue with taking yourself out of the mental space that you put yourself into when you do the piece. So yeah, I don't know about, well, I'm speaking for myself. I know that these guys feel it as well, but yeah.
I think when we originally did the performance last year, I think after the 3 shows, I think it was quite a shock to the system a little bit, I think, mentally, because you've been in this process and it's quite overwhelming when you're in this space and you're joined with 6 other performers or 5 other performers, and then to just go from everything going crazy to just going to nothing for a couple of weeks or a month or so can be quite, for me personally, I felt lost because I felt like I didn't know what my purpose was or what I was doing in that, in my kind of day-to-day, because I've been so engaged and so involved in the process.
Because then at the same time I would agree with Jordan and say like something in terms of like therapy, psychiatrist, just to help with
because I think
the deeper levels.
Yeah, because I think if your support system is someone that's already going through it, then it's just it could get muddled up. Yeah. And sometimes maybe it'd be quite useful and helpful to have an outside perspective.
Just a quick note as well. I think because of I think our training didn't prepare us for the amount that we would be doing. I think in terms of like learning repertoire and working with like counts, melodies, even trying to like write down what you've done to remember it. I don't think like at university we didn't really do enough, I think personally, to help us with that kind of stuff.
Again, if I think about like training, I've had quite different kinds of training in all sorts of different environments, and I think like more and more recently there's more focus on mental well-being as a part of class or projects or things like that. And some projects that I've been involved in have directly been about mental well-being as well, so then there is an overlap. I have to say with Red, like there was a lot of care in the room, and it was a very, like, that was completely integral to the piece we were making and the energies of the room. That we were all, we did a circle the beginning and end of every day, checking in with everyone. I think that's really important to create an open, honest space for everyone to feel how they feel and be as active or inactive as they want to be, but just everyone being equally valued and respected in the space. I think that goes such a long way, and I've experienced different projects where that's not the case. So, and it really has been detrimental to my own mental health as a result of environments not feeling supportive or feeling like overladen with work, or like overladen with responsibilities, and you know what I mean, and the communication not being clear, or not feeling kind of on a par with everyone in the space, whether that's intentional or not. Just kind of like having that awareness from the creative team to put that as important as the work that is created, because ultimately that's how you get the best out of people, is by supporting their mental well-being through your project, whatever project that might be. So I think that is like super important to consider.
Well, I did a dance degree at university as well, and we did some dance science, and part of that dance science module was looking at the psychology of dance. So in terms of training, that was really interesting. We learnt about like the fixed mindset versus growth mindset, which has been really useful for me, because I'm usually someone that tends to see myself a specific way without much room for manoeuvre. But that has taught me to be able to kind of cultivate a growth mindset where I look at myself in terms of, okay, how can I learn from this? How can I improve upon this in a constructive way rather than a way that sees myself as like defective? So that was interesting, and actually is something that I'm constantly thinking of, like how can I grow as an artist? How can I level up from where I currently am? And it feels really positive and productive. Training with Boy Blue is really tough. Kenrick sometimes has like a quite drill sergeant approach of breaking you down in order to elevate you, which works, but requires you to go through a process of like crumbling before you become stronger, which is quite difficult mentally to deal with. So that training with him has taught me an element of resilience, mental resilience, and also a sort of mental detachment. So knowing that if he's cussing me for something or shouting at me for something or really trying to push me, it's not personal. It's because he sees the potential of what I could be doing that I'm not currently doing. And also that it's about my dance rather than me as a human being. So that's, I've learnt that a lot. I've learnt to kind of detach myself from negative feedback, or detach my emotions from the negative feedback, and just kind of have a bit of a shield and then have a rational kind of approach to, okay, how can I take that on? How can I actually improve?
Questions?
It hasn't. I've had to learn all of that on my own. Absolutely hasn't. It's got nothing to do with psychological or emotional well-being. That has come from sources. I've outsourced that through my own spiritual journey, and that's been brought into every area of my life, including my artistic practice.
I think that's the only time where you're then seen as an individual in like a hip hop theatre world. What more in the past than now, but that's when you're like, hey, you need to take care of yourself in that sense. But the physical is like expected of you. So yeah, completely that's something you have to do for yourself.
I think things were spoken about, for, let's say for example equity or things, when we were in training and told that, you know, this and this are good for you and will look after you. But if I'm honest, actually, if I think back, maybe I forget something, but minimal in terms of like mental being. unless you came in with something already, let's say, but not necessarily mental being for dance, because it's necessary, especially in the freelance world, or not even just freelance, but for me, I speak out of experience in freelance industry. Also, I have an interest in like mental health, so also I've done like research for that and for my own choreographic work. So to me, it's always something I've been interested in, and I think that's lucky that I came with that sort of interest already and curiosity in that world. But I don't think it was taught or warned about enough during my day's training or also working professionally. I think it can be taken into consideration more.
So mental demands, as I said, like resilience is a really, really big one. You have to be prepared to be told that what you're doing is not good enough, and that you need to make it good enough by like tomorrow or the next 5 minutes. So yeah, as I said, kind of being able to detach yourself from the feedback that's telling you that what you're doing is not good enough, and recognise that it's not Ken or whoever's the rehearsal director saying you as a person are not good enough, and that you have the ability to do better, sometimes it can feel very personal, but again, I've through these processes developed kind of allies as well, and recognised who my people are that I can really trust in and talk with, and have that emotional kind of outlet or conversation with. And actually Kenrick I have a really good relationship with. Even if he's been like this with me, afterwards I can speak to him and be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling, and we can have like a rational conversation about it.
I think because the way the books likes to work is
very out of the box.
Yeah, quite out of the box. I think there's a lot of times where we could be working. We'll be working on a large amount of repertoire, and he could pull up any little bit at any time. So it's kind of always knowing everything to the point where he can then change it, and then once he's changed it, it's then making sure that you remember the version that we've latest worked on, because there'll be times that we'll have changed something 3 times, and then it's remembering the last version and kind of getting rid of old stuff. But then he might say to you, do you remember the first time that we did it? Can you just do that for me? And then you're like, what? I forgot about that one. So then, yeah, I think that's one of the biggest demands, being able to just pull up pieces of repertoire at any time.
Yeah, I think also our physical ability, like Josh was saying earlier, like we all specialise in certain things, and we try our best as a company to be able to be as versatile as possible and be able to do everything, but sometimes we can't all do everything. Like Josh said, he struggles with floor work, I struggle with other stuff, so I think sometimes, just as much as we're trying to remember the movement, we're always trying to look after our bodies as well, because if I know that I'm not strong in a certain area, I'm trying to make sure that I don't get injured while trying to not mimic but imitate that quality of movement.
Like with me as well, like coming off of that, a part of it for me is like self-doubt, where it will just get to a point where it's like, I don't think I can do this, or like I'm not good enough to do this bit, like I should just be, you should just cut me. Because just how we work is very intense, and there's a lot of pressure to try and, I think we put it on ourselves, to be honest, but to try and please and give the best that we can. And when it's not done, I think we all come down on ourselves really hard. So that's another big mental block for me personally, anyway.
Yeah, I think.
And like as well, trying to deal with how Botis reacts in rehearsals is a hard one, because it affects the whole mood of the room. Even if like there's one person in the room, even if it's not Botis, if their mood goes down, it does kind of affect everyone, and it is trying to not let it affect you and just help that one person up. So like trying to just like, cool, this doesn't work, let's not let it get to us and try something else. And
I think it's hard as well, because of the intentional 6, some days it feels like it's just always repeating, and if you've had one bad day, if the next day is bad, then it's like your whole week just feels disgusting. So yeah, I think because it's like constantly repeating, like you basically go home, you might look at something quickly, you eat, you sleep, and then you wake up and you're back in the studio. It's like there's not a lot of time to shift yourself away from that like mental space. So I think that's a big struggle as well.
Sometimes you can start fresh, and the next day you come in and you've got a new mindset, but then like just saying, if someone isn't in that same mindset as you've tried to get yourself into, or Botus is on another wave where he wants to really push something, it can really throw you off. I think because of us as a company have set that expectation, it can then become a pressure of like when we don't meet the expectation that we've set quite high, we know when we're not on point. I think that can be quite stressful sometimes.
I basically hadn't been on my steroid asthma inhalers for a while, and got really, really ill like a couple of weeks into the project, and thought it was kind of a cold or flu situation. I kind of took myself to hospital, and they were like, it's your asthma, you need to like go back on steroids, so like the steroid inhalers. And so working through that was really challenging, like working through like a real bad chest. And again, I was able to do everything physically, but I'm just in a lot of like, I'm coughing, and it was just a kind of new awareness of like, oh my gosh, all these things that I've been experiencing several times a year that I thought were like me getting ill were actually all related to my asthma. And it kind of made me relook at that and take that seriously, because it helped improve my then sleep quality and things like that. But that was a real worry for me at the time, because I thought, am I going to be able to do this in this condition I'm in? And that was a big thing to push through.
I'd say first and foremost, when we step into rehearsals, we have to feel like it's a safe environment. Knowing what we're able to handle as individuals, and where we're able to place ourselves. Knowing, kind of like making sure I check in with myself, to see what, how, obviously we want to push every day to our best, but, knowing, finding my own coping mechanisms, and, mentally how I can create the right thought patterns to take me where I need to go. So making sure like I do the work myself rather than expecting to walk into rehearsals and always, expect things to be smooth or easy or in my favor, making sure that I'm mentally prepared and I focus on my mental strength and resilience, I guess. So that definitely affects how, what I'm able to give.
In order for me to be really emotionally invested in something, I have to feel that from all of the other people in the room. Like there's a level of vulnerability that we have to show as performers, and if I can feel like some other people are not being true to themselves, that's going to make me want to hold back or not show all my cards either. So I think there's a real kind of dialogical relationship in between all of the performers and the kind of choreographer and directing team, where everyone has to be prepared to be truly open and honest. And actually we did have that in Rebel. We had conversations where people were like, I'm not happy, or this is hurting, can I do it a different way? That did make it feel like, okay, I can be vulnerable, I can be myself. Sorry. So I guess it's the group collective environment and mindset, and being with people who you can sense that they're in the same headspace as you, they're in the same commitment to their artistry as you, in terms of wanting to come together and make that performance true and real and honest. This is interesting actually, because I did a job with Norm a couple of years ago before, and they work a different way to the way that we do in Boy Blue, in terms of hours. So with Norm, we did a good hour of fitness in the morning, which felt like, yes, I'm waking myself up, like this is what we need. And it was always the same every day, like that was the structure. And then we did longer hours in the morning, and then had lunch at like 2, and then had a shorter afternoon, which maybe was more to do with formations and spacing and less technical things. And that for me felt really helpful, because it was like you got the bulk of the work done in the morning when you had more energy, and then the second half of the day was when people were just eaten, they're tired, so let's do the more kind of logistical stuff that doesn't require so much of us as performers.
We just talk to ourselves after rehearsals, to be honest. That's when everyone's kind of in that same space and is willing to talk, and that's like our decompression as a company, without notice.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, as soon as Botus leaves the room, and everyone's able to be like, I was struggling on this bit, and then once someone else goes, yeah, I was struggling, then you're like, oh, okay, we're all in the same room. Because I think during the time
it's silent.
Yeah, depending on when like you look up as well. Say we're doing something down on the floor, you look up and someone will be doing something amazing, and you're like, how are they doing that? And then you might get it as well, but then like by the end, it's like, oh, okay, I see. At that point, they was actually struggling as well. They weren't just find it easy, yeah.
Because of our training and how long we have trained together as a team, it's created a really safe space for us to just like cry in front of the whole team, which is like a really sensitive and like a big thing or personal thing to many people. I feel like that does help our mental state, because if we was in a place where, or a space where you don't really trust everyone and you don't really feel that comfortable with each individual, I feel like each individual's mental state could be just a complete mess. Do you know what I mean? Because you're like, this is on my chest and I can't express it because I'm in fear of being judged. You know what I mean? And like I'm sure everyone has cried in front of everyone within the piece, within rehearsals, and there has been no judgment. There's a really good support network within the team that we have, and I think that is because of how hard we do train together. If we look at it that way,
I think it'd be completely different if we were individuals hired for a job. I think, like Josh is saying, I think because we work so tightly together, we've created that space where we can be vulnerable with one another. I think that is our support system, most of all, is each other. But yeah, it'd be good. It'd be interesting to see other areas where we could find support externally.
So it might sound like an obvious one, but trust me, it's not. A safe environment, I would say, is like acknowledgement of me being who I am, and that being okay and enough and allowed. So I think that goes for like gender, expression, identity, sexuality, however you want to categorize those things. You don't need to categorize those things if everyone is seen as an equal person in the room, regardless of all these things that we know like should be the case. But really and truly, microaggressions can just lead to your whole being shutting down and shutting off. And there's a kind of unspoken tension or resentment in the air because there's on a sheer basis of you as you're not being allowed. And it's a hard one to actually kind of pinpoint, but it's something that I'm sure many individuals feel, and maybe also feel like they don't know how to express how they're feeling, but they know something's not quite right. And we see that a lot with like gender politics and biases, and that are kind of there in the space, but there's no way of articulating it. And that, again, that can be about skin color, that can be about gender, that can be about sexuality, that can be about gender presentation, that could be about anything. And I think that we have to talk about that base level before we talk about anything else, because that creates these dynamics in the space that can be very uncomfortable for certain individuals, and even more uncomfortable if there's not an environment that they can be brought up freely, or just think about it. If you're not allowed to be who you are in a project, that doesn't mean you have to of course that means you can become who you need to become in the project, but first you have to be allowed to be in the space as an equal alongside everyone else. That is the most important thing, first of all. That everyone, to a certain degree, if you're asking for 100% commitment from a dancer, which I think is important that you get when you're running a project, is that you get 100% commitment. You have to if you're asking for that 100% commitment, then that goes both ways of committing to allowing that person fully the respect, it goes both ways, right, what we're saying. But then if you feel I guess you're not, that you are 100% committed, but you're not, say, supported in the way you need to be in a project, then that leads to, I think, a disconnect in your emotional capacity to invest in the project, because you have to kind of keep some back for you, which I think can lead to, again, not maybe having your best self put forward, if you will, in a project. But again, it's a hard, you have to manage that. I'm sure to varying degrees, everyone will relate to not, they'll know a project when they've fully emotionally invested, and they'll know a project where they've had to pull some back. They've known a project where they haven't had any emotional attachment at all, and it does come in a scale, and that is healthy, that okay, I can't, do you know what, this environment isn't great for me, how can I hold back something for myself but still get the job done? But I guess for me, that's not really the way I like to operate, because I want to be fully immersed in what I choose to do, with my time, right? So again, this creating a safe space is just so important, and it means something different to every person. But the individual has a responsibility to be open, to come into the space and be really open, and vice versa, because it doesn't work if there's a block. And if someone, say, comes in open, the other person comes in closed, then that can just create, that wasn't meant to be a violent movement. But you know what I mean, it's about that balance, right? Obviously nothing is perfect and people are going to make mistakes, but the intention behind it is what's, I think, the most important thing of creating a safe space, is the intention behind getting everyone on the same page, to know that they are in it. You can't just announce that it's a safe space, because then what does that mean? You have to show that it's a safe space through what you do. Again, I don't know if I think I'm going off on tangents, but God, I'm really happy to be getting asked these questions, because I think this is such a overlooked element of working, where you're kind of putting your body on the line for everything, not just your body, your whole being.
I've been told to get to dark places, in order to think of things to then get there. But in terms of as a platform to be able to do that in a safe manner or things like that, then that hasn't necessarily always been there. It's been, think of something awful that's happened to you, okay, now dig into that one, and maybe that's had to come sort of straight in. So I wouldn't always say in a safe manner. I'd say that people want it because it makes the work look honest, and clear. But it's not always come from. It may have come from their heart when they've said it, but it hasn't been dealt in a way that I think built me up for that. And that's not to say all scenarios. Lots of scenarios have been really it's been catered for, and then I feel ready to just do, to go to that next sort of stage, emotion. But not always. Quite a few times it's also just been left, let's say, I'm totally honest, quite a few times it's just been left and not really wind back down, it's sort of left for you personally to bring it down, which I get in some scenarios, but others we haven't even had that dialogue for me to bring it down, it's just been okay, cool, do what you need to do, and it's I don't know what I need to do.
I mean, we've all been, unfortunately, as dancers in environments where we felt very undervalued or replaceable and just not valued at all. We've all unfortunately been in those places in our lives. So that is something that can really take a toll on a person's dance journey or artistic journey, So making sure that we find people that are on the same frequency as us and knowing, what we are able to, what is good for us and what is beneficial for us as artists, so our artistry is not compromised by that. And definitely, if we as dancers, because so much of what we do is psychosomatic, there's always an underlying personal journey, and a lot of the times, some people will ask for dancers to leave everything at the door. Some people will ask you to take it with you and channel it. So knowing which category you fall in definitely affects how you're able to deliver. I guess making sure you do the self work alongside the physical work is I can't stress it enough. But I don't know if that answers your question. What else affects what you're going through personally, where you're stepping into, and what the piece demands of you. How personal the piece is, how much you have to pull out of yourself individually, and how transparent you're able to be with it.
Well, for something like Rebel, it would have probably Red as well, actually, the newer one, which I wasn't in, but I know a bit about the process. I think it would potentially have been useful to have a psychotherapist or some kind of counsellor to talk through the emotional experiences that we were going through, because for those pieces, and especially the one that I was in, we had to put ourselves in a really dark place, and our training has not prepared us for that. I think maybe actors have much more of that kind of training where they're able to detach themselves from the character and leave their work at work at the end of the day and not let it emotionally affect them. But the process that we went through in Rebel, as I said, was kind of all consuming. You couldn't leave it in the studio. You had to come home with it and do your research and figure out what your alter ego or character was. So for me, I was looking at like a survivor of the Grenfell Tower fire and looking at stuff online, and it really actually like negatively affected me for a while. And yeah, the training doesn't really prepare you for that. And I think maybe it would have been helpful at some point to be able to have conversations about how we were feeling or what we were experiencing in those rehearsals. Because the dance itself, it can be an outlet for your emotions or the emotional journey that you've been through to an extent, but also it can sometimes leave you really, really drained. And then after, especially after a theatre performance is done, there's not any kind of debrief or anything afterwards. So it's kind of like you give all of this stuff out, and then sometimes you're left feeling a bit like emotionally broken, and then it's kind of up to yourself to reflect and rebuild yourself. So yeah, in general, I think for processes like those kind of theatre shows, even if you do a bit of prep, I know in Red rehearsals every day they had a circle where they talked about anything they wanted to raise or how they were feeling or whatever, but it'd be interesting to know whether they did that afterwards as well, or if it was just before.
Just the knowledge of being able to talk. I mean, Ella's made that quite clear, even outside of like company hours, which I think depends on who you're working with. Some people don't have time for that, some people are too busy. But just even knowing I could do that is helpful. I might choose not to because I have like a different support network. But knowing that allows me to then have a different mentality in the space. To know I can talk about whatever is an issue is quite helpful. In terms of actual resources, I'm not sure I can think of any.
I think it's dependent on what your project is. So I'm working on a project at the moment around the topic of immigration. I think if it's topics that can trigger people within the space from their own personal experiences, then I think it would be good to have a contact for a counsellor or somebody who specialises, maybe has a therapy background, that is a safe space person to speak to. So I think depending on what the project is or what the piece is, about, which they often are on topics that can be triggering people in the space, I think that would be like an amazing resource to have on hand. If money and time is not, doesn't allow that, then I think just allowing whoever's leading, allowing time for your dancers or for whoever's in the space to do what they need to do if they have their own, if they have their own way of handling that, or letting them know that you're also available. I think that being available is like the biggest support mechanism where you can be to someone. It's just the being available.
I was just going to say, just remind me of something. Pretty much everyone, if you have like a tight muscle, they go, "Oh, I know someone that can help you with that."
Yeah, exactly.
And give you a card, or like give you a contact number for a physiotherapist or whatever. That'd be great for like a mental health counselor.
Yeah,
or something
totally.
Like that. It's like, that triggered you. Okay, that's someone I know. So it can be like normalised that way.
Totally,
I think that would be definitely helpful.
Sweet.
It's weird because like I wouldn't say I don't have access to it. I just haven't looked into it. But like a therapist, basically, just someone that is trained, safeguarded in that realm.
I think in hip hop theatre we bring a lot of our own experiences into our work. I think it would just be useful to have the understanding and the knowledge of how we can, similar to an actor would, kind of separate, still allow to take influence from those experiences, but still be able to differentiate between real life and what's happened in the past, and not allowing that to trigger things from our past that can then affect our future.
I think even just like having a mentor or someone that's in the scene that you can go to, maybe I think because hip hop theatre is quite a new thing, or it's still kind of a thing that's like yet to be defined, it's quite broad. There isn't too many people that are like overly experienced in it. So then like having someone that you can go to ask for help or to point you in the right direction, especially for the people that are younger than us, because we're quite young as well. People that are like the generations below that need guidance, that I don't know if there's people there for them as well.
That's a hard one to answer, only because every company and production is so vastly different that each company, I think, would need a different set of resources depending on what is or isn't already implemented into their kind of way of working. So I think, first of all, it requires every company to, like I was saying before, put it on the same level as everything else and take it seriously in accordance to like how they're going to run and structure their working day, and what needs to be put in or not. Because often I think dancers are seen as like bodies and just have to get a job done and shouldn't ever complain and should always be grateful, forgetting that actually our body is literally the front line of what we're doing, and it's our career as well. So it's not just always about pushing through everything, because you know that we already know that that's not good for the body, and that mental health is so integral to our bodies being able to work efficiently, that I think it really does come down to like checking in with each individual and respecting each individual for having a different way of learning, perhaps, or a different, but it's a hard one because there still needs to be a standard. But really and truly, if someone's 100% committed to your project or not. If someone's committed. If they're committed, then you need to go, do you know what? This person's 100 on the project, but they need a little bit more time for X, or they need like less demands on them during the day in this respect. And it's really just kind of going on a individual case basis, and if someone's invested or not. Like you can tell from like straight off the bat who's really on it or not, and who's actually trying their best but might be struggling in certain areas, and then going, okay, how best can I support that person with this situation? So again, it's hard to say like in terms of like specific resources, but I think something that is like, it doesn't take any more money necessarily is doing the check-in and out, or like implementing it into the schedule in a way that's a bit more balanced, you know what I mean, rather than it kind of being someone's going to come in for one day and talk to you about mental health and then leave. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, how can that be a part of the whole experience? And it's like the care should extend from day one right through, and not just be like interjected in like 1 hour session somewhere, and then not considered for the rest of the time you're working. But again, I know that that's like really much easier said than done, and that not everyone considers working in that way, and that also, even if you do consider working in that way, it's not as easy as suddenly flicking a switch and knowing how to do that. But that's where it'd be great if you had someone come on board with you as a part of the team to actually be that person, be that voice, and go, hey, even if they're not like a presence, like physical presence, there's someone there to kind of go help the creative team know how best to manage the situation, which I think Boy Blue and Red did really, really well. And like I felt really supported, and I had an amazing experience. I think as a result of those measures taken, it allowed me to optimize my job and be the best performer I could be for that role. So it is so tied into everything else. It doesn't just happen and you go, oh, like how did they get there? There's a process, that all of that is super, super important to the process.
Rachel K. I mean, we can all somehow gain access to like a counsellor in the NHS, whether it's not specific for the dance journey, but at least it can support the mental journey that you're going through personally, like the repercussions that you might have from the process that you're currently in. But specifically for artists and hip hop artists, I mean, I would say we definitely have a sense of community, and I've always been present in conversations where I felt safe to share the mental journey that I've experienced in a process. So in terms of in a social aspect, in a conversation, we definitely, I would say, we have that space to be vulnerable with each other. But in terms of a system or a specific resource for us, it would be, as a suggestion, it would be great if we had some type of workshop or a panel that we talk about this specifically for us. Like I said before, in terms of the themes that we address and the intensity of these things is something that maybe it's worth exploring for hip hop artists. But yeah, I wouldn't say we have no access to. We have access to these things. It's just about us feeling safe and being honest with ourselves to really take the step and reach out either to each other or to a counselor, and maybe in the future we create that resource for us, but because the sense of community is already there. Yeah.
Okay, so as a choreographer, almost like a mentorship or some sort of support over a longer period of time, where there's more of an experimental allowance to make work and experiment with different kinds of making work, and it not having such a pressure attached to it, like an outcome maybe, to allow a hip hop artist to find their voice as theatre artists. And it isn't just an overnight I know what kind of choreographer I want to be, or I know what kind of work I want to make. It's it's having that process and allowing that process to happen, which we can see from the choreographers who are out there. The best ones are the ones who have actually been doing this for a long time and have had support in various ways that have allowed them to find and hone and pinpoint their vision and how that vision's been able to come to life. So a longer term support for choreographers would be great. I think more what Artists for Artists are doing, in the sense that they're creating week blocks or just for hip hop artists to come and learn more about the sector, and also about hip hop and the histories and how they can merge, and the people that have been making theatre, who started and up to now, and how it's evolving, and also how you as an artist, performer or otherwise, can bring more to the table and refine yourself as an artist and empower yourself as an artist as well. So more programs. I've learned so much just by traveling and meeting different scenes and seeing how they approach the dance, but I've never done that with theatre, right? I've always done that as a breaker, traveling around. That's where I've learned so much about the dance itself through traveling, and how different people from all over the world see it and express it, and how do I to I'm a different dancer over here with this group of people than I am over here with that group of people. Maybe it's got nothing to do with style, but it's just about an energy, or, you know, like that would be really cool as like a theatre exchange somehow, you know, like with like hip hop companies from around the world that make theatre, you know, like kind of cross, like jumping. It'd be great to like just go and do a placement with a company, right? Like where you get to go and be a dancer in a company somewhere for a couple of weeks, or, you know, like almost like little trials. And yeah, maybe that is what just auditions are for, but you know, it'd be cool to like do that in different ways, because also I don't think you can necessarily tell who you want to work with all the time just from one audition. And you like it, you know, if you're like got a week where you're working with a company, it's not like a secret audition or anything, but you just really find, because it's as much the dancer, like, do you want to be involved in this project, as the choreographer, do I want you in this project? So it needs that like two-way thing, because again, like I said, like ultimately then it's about, you find a good working balance for both parties, then that's how you make the best work. So like, and that doesn't necessarily depend on location. It could be just about the ethos of the company or the way that they work that suits you, or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah, sorry, a conservatoire, a hip hop theatre conservatoire, where you can also get qualifications at the same time that you're learning. Because I think, because hip hop is kind of seen as like a either like if you're good, then like you're commercially successful. I feel like hip hop theatre isn't looked in the same light as it is to be dancing with like Madonna or like Rita Ora. I think if you're in the hip hop theatre sector, you're kind of looked down on a bit. So I think it'd be nice to be able to get some actual like qualifications. So like it could be the same as going to like university.
It's peak, because I feel like that qualification will just be null and void. They'll be like, cool, you got that, but and what? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it'll just be, it'll take a long time, but I feel like,
I mean, more so like that you could go to it instead of going to like university. Do you know what I mean? So then you can. There's more like a justification to like your parents as well, to be like, okay, I'm doing this and I'm actually getting something out at the end of it, because we all have the same thing where our families are like, you get paid. It's like they still don't believe that we're getting paid to do theatre work.
Yeah.
And also, an archive of theatre work, so that people that are starting can look at stuff and be like, oh, okay, this has already been done. This is kind of the direction that people are going in. Yeah. I could maybe go into this, rather than things being repeated because there's no knowledge of what's come before if you're just starting.
Yeah, I think some people kind of create their own image of what they think hip hop theatre is. Because it's always one of those questions where when someone asks what hip hop theatre is, no one knows how to answer it. I think an archive could be quite a good option. Just giving them a bit of knowledge, and even just other people that might be in their area that they could then contact, who might be like young, old pioneers of hip hop theatre.
Something that I would like to see, I think I got told by lighting director Anthony Hadley that when he worked in Germany, that they have, I think for freelance dancers, and I think work in general, that they have a sector where the freelancers get an allowance for when they're in between jobs. I think that would be very helpful, so that you don't have to do 3 months, 2 months of waitering and then get fired or say, oh, I can't do this no more. Yeah, I think just having that underlying support network of money just to help you in between jobs would be very helpful, because when it comes Christmas period, it's very hard.
I think a lot of dancers, once they finish the project, they start panicking what their next work is going to be, so they just hop into any job they can find, as opposed to being able to specifically use their skills that they have to do a job that they want to do. So I think, like just saying, having a support where they could just, just be supported in an area where they don't have to stress about what's coming next. I mean, it is a part of the process of learning as an artist, I think, what areas you can work in. So I think it's a bit of both, where you can have the support, but you don't get complacent or you don't get lazy, and you're not going to go and find the jobs that you want to do.
I think it's also maybe like a like a monthly checkup, or like a place to go to in order to either talk about your mental well-being, or have a checkup with like a physio, or I think because being freelance, we tend to if you start to get like a little like injury, you try to just like keep going so that you can continue working. But because your body makes you your money and you have to invest into it, I think being taught as well that like going to get like a massage, or going to the physio to get exercises in order to strengthen a part that you might be weaker in, that you don't know about, is quite important as well.
Some sort of way to get like a discount on that as well, do you know what I mean? Because it's expensive stuff.
It's expensive.
And because, like you said, our bodies are our tool for work, it only seems logical, isn't it, to get that little discount. It's not like we're just doing it, I just want a massage, do you know what I mean? Then you pay the full £80, but this is how we work, so.
Also, depending on what company you're in, I think having an exercise program to work off of during the process and outside of the process in order to keep on top of your workload would be really great as well.
I think, also, even like somewhere where people can dance artists, good hip-hop dance artists, can learn to articulate themselves a bit better. I think, not that everyone can articulate themselves, but even just things like applying for funding, or even applying for different things. If you're approaching a choreographer and you want to make a good impression, just what is required and what is needed. Because even simple things like when I left uni, I didn't know how to do an invoice. Like, that's something I should have known. But if I didn't have the help from people around me, then I wouldn't be able to get that done. So I think, or even if it was like a portfolio or a guide that can kind of just be a step by step of just different things that you should need to know as an artist.
So the hip hop and theatre fusion is important to not only train it like that, but I think it's also good to break them apart so you can differentiate what's what, and then you can also train it individually, so then you can cross it over. Just like learning a technique, just like learning a new sport, you need to learn it for what it is before you bring it to something else, because then you understand the principles and the foundation. And I think lots of the time it's just taught together like it's the same thing, but there's so much more to it than just that. So I think that can be worked on. And I think going back to sort of the mental preparation, I think also this could be something just to take note of and just to warn the dancers.
Okay, so hip hop theatre, first of all, is not a showcase. It's not, I'm coming in to learn my 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I'm going home again. It's like you have to put, like, there's many different ways to choreograph and create content, but like a lot of the time, you know, hip hop theatre, you're innovating, and you're like, there's so many different ways to generate material as well, and you do need dancers to be really proactive in that. Like I was saying, like right at the beginning, about sensitivity as well, like how are you performing, how are you bringing your energy into the space, like how are you investing in that whole experience. That is, like, hip hop theatre should be an experience, you know, theatre is an experience, you know, it's not entertainment in the sense of like watching something impressive for its aesthetic. It's also, it's got a narrative, but maybe it doesn't have a narrative, but maybe it's abstract in a way that it's, do you know what I mean? There's like hip hop, this is where maybe like hip hop artists can like look at the way that established theatre operates now, which might mainly come from like a contemporary dance like way of working, but also, you know, hip hop is about innovating and about creating new ways of working and not following necessarily a model. But yeah, one thing I've seen is like that professionalism, like that ability to switch from like knowing when you're doing a showcase for fun and you're rehearsing with your mates, and knowing that, okay, you know, a project is like runs from this time to this time. What do you need to bring with you? How can you be active and present in the room? Like, you know what I mean? Like knowing that balance of like who you are in the space and why you're there, I think is really, really important, so that it doesn't become like, so that you don't become a pain in the ass to work with. Do you know what I mean? Like, because, you know, it is easy to kind of just treat it like, if you've done, say, mainly commercial work, or if you've worked in a environment where you show up to class and it's all about how fast you can pick up like the routine or whatever, and it's just about that, like that's you working in a very different way to then I think the way you need to work to do hip hop theatre. I think you know, the demands could be like how you integrate hip hop in its truest essence into theatre, like where are those boundaries, like how much can you break down a style before it becomes something else, and what are your, like, what's your the message in the work, and yeah, I think maybe there is a kind of expectation of things to be, I don't know, it's hard because I think those pressures and demands come from different aspects, like, you know, different, maybe like, I don't know, theatres and commissioners will have their demands, and then sort of like the hip hop gatekeepers might have their demands, and they might be completely different. So I think there's probably like demands coming from all different angles that are very different. But again, that is a good question. I'd be interested to hear what other people think the demands are, because I'd imagine the demands might be different also in how you present yourself, or like who you are, you know, and what, you know, realm you come from, what style you come from, and if you're, you know, all of these different things are going to maybe make a different demand on you as to how you should present your work or what it should be about, or
I think they need to prepare them for professional work. I think they need clarity, and they need clarity in terms of like organisation and structure before a process. And I don't mean like overnight or in the morning. I think actually to know that a couple of days in advance really helps for you to be in the zone, or, you know, or have your body ready, have your mind ready, these different things, because there is so diverse in the hip hop structure. You know, there's so many, like you could just have a session where it's just purely counts. You know, you could have a session where it's purely rep. Let's say, you know, you learn like for like what it is. You have a session where it's like, you know, now freestyle, do you. And I think because of this, you need to come at it from different angles, and if you don't already know that, it just means maybe you waste the first 15-20 minutes in a rehearsal trying to get into that.
I think a balance of physical and mental well-being, kind of understanding, and a practice that we can follow. So it's like you're obviously doing really good work already with this, with conditioning that's dance specific, and other people are starting to see that and see like, okay, we can't just do our styles and technique training or do our rehearsals. We have to have a practice that's outside of that, that's supplementary, that is supporting the movements and skills that we need to be then doing in the rehearsal room. So that side, I think, is starting to come, but would be, still more useful for everyone to have. And Boy Blue is interesting because we have the company that does shows, and then we have a broader kind of company or collective of dancers who might not even be professional dancers. They do other things. They might be a nurse or a doctor or whatever. They have a different day job, and then they come on the weekend. But then they still might be required to do a breaking convention show, which is a really high level of physicality. So I think for the broader dance community of performers who still do theatre work, there could probably be still a much better understanding of how to take care of your body physically and maintain a good condition. And then the mental well-being, I think, could do with a more all-round, all-encompassing understanding for all people who are in the dance industry, not just performers but also the choreographers, so that they can understand like when there's too much work for them, when they need to lay off the performers a bit, definitely rehearsal directors, knowing when to push us and when to hold back a bit and when to have a conversation with someone. And then even I know like some producers at the moment that have said they're super burnt out, and yeah, having something that would help us all to understand how to balance how much energy we give, how much emotion we invest in something, or just some dance meditation class or something. Yeah.
The need to. I can only talk from the norm perspective, and also working with Lee, it is having, you just got to leave your ego like at the door and down the road, because it's not about you in the work, and it's not even about the choreographer, it's just about the work. So if this arm swing don't work and it needs to be a little bit more out that I can't even reach, it's like you just gotta make it look that way regardless. And it's like just don't take things personal. And I think that's especially younger generation. Even when I started, it was like, oh, that's not good, but that's like, this is the best that I have, and I kind of took it to heart. But throughout my career I've learned that don't really matter. Just gotta take it on the chin and move on, because you just need to work together as a group to make the work. And versatility as well. I think that is a big thing. A lot of people like, I specialize in popping, so I'm just gonna do popping. And it's like you limit yourself if you're not in like a solid company where it's like, cool, I'm gonna be working with them for a while, and you're like strictly freelance, and you're like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. You limit yourself to what you can do by just being a specialist. You can still be a specialist, but also like a jack of all trades at the same time.
It's also about the message as well. I think as theatre artists, we look deeper into topics that are deeper than just surface level kind of knowledge. And I think, I think that's when it's in a theatre space, we're kind of inviting audience to kind of experience something more than just a dance piece, which I think would be a big difference to kind of just a standard hip hop company.
I think as well, also the research, because we do a lot of R&D, we spend more time trying to find new ways to do something as opposed to just putting together material.
In whatever style or world, you're in as a dancer, a dance artist, a performer, there's never, nobody warns you or nobody prepares you for, for example, if you're doing a very like emotionally taxing piece, and a lot of like the movement is very physically demanding as well. You need to be able to have to recognize what your limits are and what you're able to give, and always make sure that you come back to yourself and you step out of rehearsal, especially with hip hop where we're addressing so like heavy themes, and a lot of the time the work is very personal or very relevant to our times. So making sure that we have people that we feel supported in rehearsals, or we create, we have to create this space to be supported, and also when we leave rehearsals, we're able to speak either to the people that we're rehearsing with, or, you know, artists or non-artists that are not related to the project, but, you know, we can share how we feel, we can, you know, we can debrief, and, you know, sometimes leave our characters in the space, because we tend to carry all of that weight with us wherever we go, you know. So yeah, it's important to be able to, you know, maintain ourselves as artists and be able to perform the piece at its best, at the best of our abilities physically, but also make sure that the message that we wanna, you know, that we wanna communicate is not being compromised because of what we've had to go through mentally and emotionally, you know. So, yeah.
If you can't do 10k first week, then I don't wanna hear no chat about numbers. You man are my youngers, all blacked out like grungers, 10s and 20s and 100s.